Well, thank you for coming. I've learned from experience at these sort of occasions to trust silence. But I never know what to say, really. I think that's a blessing, really. I remember very early on when I learnt to meditate, being told when you don't know what to say nothing. As a shy young man, always never really knowing what to say, it was an absolute godsend. Actually, to be given the confidence to say nothing. And actually, after the sort of first embarrassment with somebody, it's often rather nice just to say nothing, isn't it? Or is the nothing actually the very fullness of meaning? This talk was called Keeping It Simple. And what can be simpler than just being here now, silent? I started to meditate over 60 years ago, when meditation was almost unknown in the West and was regarded with some suspicion as being Eastern and sort of not quite Christian, exotic. In fact, there was only one person I ever discovered who would teach me, and I had to go down to London, which was an awful bore at the time, because I was living here in Bakewell and I just started farming just where the showground is. The showground was my first farm, and before they covered it over with the new market. And I had to go down there to learn to meditate, attend the school and subsequent guidance that I was given. But another part of me was really rather proud, sort of wanting to be different from other people and to have this rather secret, exotic practice that I was given, that a rather formal, the initiation they called it. I sort of felt I was, special. And it was a bit of a sort of climb down, really, after some time. My father was an artist, and mother was she was then proud to be called a mother and housewife. That was before women's lib was invented. and Dad loved to draw. He was a wonderful draftsman. He always kept a sketchbook and pencil in his pocket. And whenever he didn't know what to do, he would draw what was in front of him. And, very often it was a horse or a cow or a tree or grass or leaf or anything that was in front of him. So he was naturally very attentive. He saw what was in front of him. He looked. And I remember on one occasion when I was trying to draw a horse's legs, which, is quite complicated, really. It's not just two straight lines. It's got various bumps and twists and things. And I couldn't do it, couldn't get it right. So I said to Dad, how do you draw horse's legs? And he said such a simple thing to me. Look, and then draw what you can see. There you are, my dears. Look and draw what you can see. And Mum was no less of an artist in her house. Yes, neither Mum or Dad could do bad work. They were both craftsmen through and through. And Mother's housekeeping was pure art. She couldn't lay the table untidily. Her sink was always clean. She loved to iron clothes. Even before we had a washing machine, it was when washing was done by hand, the way she hung the washing on the line in the garden. And then ironed every handkerchief before paper handkerchiefs were invented. Every handkerchief was ironed perfectly, folded accurately. And her linen cupboard was an absolute, talk about a work of art. Every sheet, every towel folded exactly, stacked in nice, neat little piles. That was Mum's pride and joy, her household. Every surface was polished and shone. So I was very fortunate to be brought up in that sort of a house. Yes, at the school I'd been introduced to giving attention. Well, of course, I didn't really understand what this was at first, or I thought I couldn't. It was, given in a rather sort of professional, exotic way, something that I hadn't done before. Giving attention, gosh, what's that? And I remember sort of trying to look at things, and then I realised that my mum and dad did this naturally, you see. It was just their natural way of living, of working. And so my meditation came down a few steps from this rather sort of super special practice to just ordinary life. Good heavens. Mum and Dad are meditating perfectly. This is the way I've been brought up anyway. It's just using my common sense, isn't it? Listening and looking with attention. Now then, these days this is a bit of a lost art because people have a very short attention span, don't they? At least young people do, at least so I'm told. On the radio I think they were saying that even YouTube videos, they seldom get more than 5 minutes viewing before they switch on to something else. But anyway, just go back a bit to that era of your parents or grandparents when there wasn't such a variety of diversions on offer. And people, naturally, women attended to the housework and men often worked with their hands, with a simple tool. A lot of what was called common labouring work was just working with a spade or something. And when I started farming, certainly most farming was like that, just working with a simple hand tool. So I was brought up to work as a craftsman also with my farming. So dear, on this subject of keeping meditation simple, I would like to remind you that you don't need anything complicated. There's nothing more important than just doing what you're doing with attention. In other words, be reminded of the blessing of simple common sense. If you're going to drink a glass of water, try to do it and actually taste, realise what you're doing. And many of you I see are sitting in bare feet or with socks on. Well, bless you. Feel your feet on the ground. And I wonder how many of you sitting here have ever in your whole life actually felt your feet on the ground. Now then, attention is a very interesting thing because I'm sure you all know what half attention is, or just a bit of attention. But how often do we look with 100% attention? That's the important thing. Full attention. And if you just look at yourself, you'll see that almost never do you look with full attention. And I think if any of us actually did look with 100% attention, you never know, you might burst with the glory of God. Do you get what I'm talking about? Now, dear, you don't need a whole special hullabaloo about meditation. There's nothing more simple and ordinary than meditation, as any ordinary, common working man knows. You pay attention. If you want to bang a nail in a bit of wood, you do it with attention, otherwise it goes crooked, don't you? If you're a woman cutting up the vegetables, I beg your pardon, men do it too now, don't they? You see, I'm an old-fashioned man. I come up with these old-fashioned ideas, so forgive me. If you're cutting up the vegetables, do it with attention or you'll cut your finger. It's a great, great secret, you see. And I'll tell you something else you may have noticed, or you may not. It's a very good test of whether you are giving attention. Because if you really give attention, what happens to this? Isn't your mind quiet? Super quiet? Because there's no more attention left for your thinking, is there? Just try it. Look, feel your feet on the ground. Come on, you all think you've done it before. You think, oh, my feet are on the ground. Of course they're not. Notice your feet on the ground, my dears. Let's try wiggling your toes and engage with the ground. You won't be able to do it, but you'll do it a bit more than you usually do it. And even if you do that, are you also able to think? Or isn't your mind quiet? No. It used to be, well, at least when I learned to meditate, the first question I was asked was, what do you want? What do you really want? What's your real deep heart desire? And very many people will say, I want peace. Well, dear friends, what's more peaceful than the ground? Ground still, isn't it? All our minds going whirling around. Oh dear, Mother Earth is still perfect peace. And if we add to this little exercise of feet on the ground, listen. You hear the noises in the kitchen. Then listen beyond that into the stillness, the silence. It's always present, isn't it? It was here when we started the meeting, still here. Listen, and also look. Just engage with the room. And it's a marvelous thing, isn't it, that the more you look, the more we see. So these three little things, all of which you can call common sense, which feeling, listening and looking, which any child can do, better than us grown-ups. It's really, what else do you need for perfect meditation? Because what do we mean by meditation anyway? It's a bit of one of these rather sort of new age words, isn't it? I tell you, 60 years ago, there was only one place in the whole of England, the whole of the country, where I could go to meditate. That was in London. And now there's meditation in every, on every notice board. Talk about something becoming fashionable. But actually, basically, people have always meditated. It goes, it's as natural as breathing, isn't it? The dinosaurs did it. What is not meditation? Isn't it really just being present here now? And something happens. You see, someone gets up and it's still held in this perfect presence, isn't it? No matter what the disturbance is. And if there are a few thoughts floating around in the mind, or even many thoughts, doesn't matter, does it? Because beyond the thoughts is this perfect peace, perfect presence. Where can I go from thy presence? You may know I think it's the 139th Psalm, isn't it? Where can I go from thy presence? If I go up to heaven, thou art there. If I go down to hell, thou art there also. If I go to the uttermost parts of the sea, even there. You see, it's everywhere. The great question is, where are we? Where are we, my dears, absent from presence? And this is the problem, really. This is why life goes wrong. We get unhappy. And why, of course, eventually we die. Because we're absent from the presence of what? The presence of God, which is eternal life. And this is the human condition. So how natural it is to come back to common sense, feet on the ground. It's a marvelous saying. My granddad said that to me as a boy. Keep your feet on the ground, my boy, when I was going off in my dreams of what I was going to be when I grew up. Keep your feet on the ground. People have always said it to each other, haven't they? Or they used to years ago. Use your common sense. That's a sweet, comforting, timeless, good counsel, isn't it? Simple. No argument, is there? Utter simplicity. So if any of you got any complications, do share them with me, and we might be able to find a simple solution. Well, of course, we can elaborate if we want to. Because where does this presence end? I would keep it very, very super simple. Where does the silence end? It's here in this room, isn't it? It's outside the room. If we go to the co-op, isn't it there also? Or on the main road? Doesn't the whole world move within stillness? Isn't it coexistent with all the action, not only of our own mental and the functionings of our body, but all that we know of life is held within this timelessness, isn't it? The noise within silence, the movement within this stillness, or another lovely word for it is rest. This rest. Matter within, because what is it? What is this? You can't describe it. It doesn't have a form, doesn't have a name, does it? It's like space. Silence, stillness, space, peace. Where does one end and the other begin? Or are they all just expansions of the other? Peace, presence. And what spirit, for heaven's sake? Who knows what spirit is? Who knows what any of these things are? Who knows what silence is? You can't describe it, can you? Or space, or presence. Yet you all know what I'm talking about perfectly well. Spirit, life, life itself, unchanging, eternal life. So simply present, isn't it? What about love? Can't you feel the embrace of this totally unjudgmental, all-embracing presence? So Jesus says, come, come, my beloved, come home, where you belong. Because isn't it like home, really? I can tell you, when you become as old as me, it's only too welcome, only too obvious that this, the mortal, the John Butler, dies out. And what's left? Isn't it this? And isn't it actually much more, in the real sense, more real than this transitory, corruptible creature, here today and gone tomorrow? And this even less reliable head of mine, wobbling. The comfort of the Spirit. Which actually teaches us all things. Again, as Jesus says, the Spirit, the real teacher, isn't it? Because when we're in touch with this, everything else falls into place. You understand. You understand. Don't we? So another marvellous thing happens, that when we're still like this, and more or less giving attention, when we look at each other, what flows between us? Completely effortlessly, naturally. Some of you are not too sure, your eyes aren't quite clear, you're still thinking. It's very difficult to be fully present. It takes a lot of practice. I've been practicing, well, as I say, over 60 years, well, I suppose my whole life, and I can't do it. I mean, better than I was. But it does help you to put life in proportion, doesn't it? Put first things first, and realise that before somehow we lose this pristine origin, we sort of fall into lower levels of consciousness, of absence really, where life becomes separated, because in this silence, you see, silence is not divided, is it? There isn't your silence and my silence. It's undivided. There's only one presence, actually. So why do we become so separate? Well, this is the story of what's called the fall of man, the fall from this higher level of consciousness, which is just not as grand as it sounds. It simply means being present. Fall into separation. And the whole work of meditation really is to rise in consciousness from this little separate me, this transitory, wobbly creature called John, into this infinite welcome. To come home. I think how complicated our daily life is. How simple is this? And I love the description of God as absolute simplicity. And we can experience this for ourselves here now, can't we? Simplicity and this fall into separation and complexity. I think this and you think that. Contention and or not. Here is time and space. This is timeless. Immeasurable. Here is past and future. This is the ever-present now. Think of the last words of Jesus, I am with you always. What is it in life that is with us always? Always has been. The one love that never fails, never says no. I'm with you. See the utter simplicity of it, here and now. And as we don't have to change our lives or stop working or stop anything really, it's just as it were opening up another dimension, isn't it? It's just being a little bit more attentive to what we're doing. Well, the most common condition these days is people with restless minds, agitated minds. Many people will come and say, I can't stop thinking. How can I control my mind as if anybody could or ever has been able to? Yes, so people are looking for ways of turning in. And of course there are countless ways of doing it. When we consider what we mean by what's inside us, we normally come up against what's called thinking. And people get upset over their thinking. You know, they worry over bad thoughts and either want to have good ones or have a rest from it. Because thinking can become very compulsive, and in fact you can say that you can almost define the human condition, at least the modern human condition, as lost in thought. What can we do about it? Well, one very simple way, as I've been telling you, is just to be present. Listen and look, and feet on the ground, and then your mind will become quiet. And here in Bakewell, I'm sure you all know what Bakewell's famous for. People come here for the day and sit by the river and spend an hour eating fish and chips by the river, just looking at the fish and the water flowing past, and feel better for it, or go to the wreck and let the children kick a ball around and look at the hillside and somehow just feel better. It's worth coming all the way to Bakewell and the traffic. So there's this sort of instinctive, I like to look out the window, because when you look out the window there's always sort of something other than this, isn't there? It gives one a rest from this. Actually, having done it automatically, I do recommend this little gesture, which really is an absolute perfect way of describing meditation, just this. Just that, my dears. This is forgetting, isn't it? I've got you. Forgiveness. Forgetting. Hence our problems, absence. Forgiveness. It's here, isn't it? Yes, anyway, to come back to thoughts, how to deal with them. Well, yes, there's just the effect of just going out for a walk or stroking a dog. You see, these things will immediately bring some rest to the mind, bring some comfort. Or just looking into the flames of a fire, if you're lucky enough to have one. Eating your dinner very often is very effective, isn't it? At bringing your mind to rest, give you something nice to focus on. And then there are more complicated things. A lot of people turn to the media, as an alternative to their own thinking, and just feed themselves on other people's thinking, which probably a mixed blessing. But there are many ways of finding rest. Now, if someone's talking a lot and you're just driving you nuts, you just want to get out of it, or a noisy party, what do? You just go out into the passage, don't you? Just turn away from it. And then the talking goes on, and at least you're out of it. Well, actually, this is a very similar way to deal with your thoughts. You just leave them behind. How do you do that? Well, you need an alternative. And traditional alternatives just give you another thought or something for the mind to focus on, which may be called a mantra, if you've heard of that. You're just given a name, a name of God maybe. And if you repeat this again with full attention, then you'll find that your thoughts just continue, but you're focusing on something else. And you forget about the thoughts. The thoughts just go on naturally. I like to think of the mind really as, you know how your tummies are just digesting your breakfast, isn't it? It's just going on and you haven't thought about it for the last half hour. It just happens naturally, doesn't it? Well, your mind is really just a mental digestive system. It's digested a bit more complicated than this, because it's picking up all the impressions of life today, all the latest media news, the people you've talked to, things in your daily life, all the space and time and complications that the mind produces. But it's really just digesting it completely naturally. So everything is perfect in its way. All our various thoughts are just digesting. So if you can just do that, go beyond it, then there's no problem. because this just carries on naturally. It's terribly hard work to try to control your mind. Yeah, I don't know anybody who's ever been able to do that. I certainly can't. I just lost interest in it. Just get bored with it, fed up with it. And then you see it just goes on naturally. There's nothing wrong with the mind. It's perfectly all right. It's just doing its job. It's just digesting whatever it's got in it. But if you turn to something else, something you love, when you love something, you'll turn to it naturally, won't you? And in that love, you'll just forget about what you don't love. Marvelously effective. Just look at someone you love, often your dog, your best friend. Immediately you'll feel better, won't you? You'll lift it out of whatever it is you don't like. The whole work of meditation is based on the very simple principle that we turn from where we're less happy to where we're more happy. It's turning to what's better, what suits us better. That's why it works. You know, presumably you come here because you want to benefit yourself in some way. You want to find something that you might find useful. And if you want to find simplicity in life and rest, then you'll probably do what I'm suggesting. But if you don't, if you prefer this, if you're more interested in this than in that, well, God bless you. You're free to do so. Similarly with your mind. You can spend the rest of your life thinking. Some people do. If you think of the mind as, if you think of clouds in the sky, the mind's very much just like clouds. And when you get in an airplane, you go up through the clouds, and what's beyond the clouds? Open sky, isn't it? Goes on forever. You look down, you see clouds are just clouds. And somewhere down there, a world you've almost forgotten about, called an airport. And you see this little performance of the human condition. Separateness and that. But up there's freedom, isn't there? So the mind's only a problem if you're sitting in it. You find an alternative. And that's really the inner work of meditation. The two are sort of mixed up. They're interlocked, aren't they? Both the same thing. In a way, just paying attention is using feet on the ground or listening and looking as an outer mantra. Inner mantra, an outer mantra. I've really learned to trust this presence, much more than I trust myself these days. And I've rather given up on John Butler. He's a I'm not sure what he is, but he won't be around much longer, but his presence will be. I've much more faith in this than that. This simplicity is a great clue that we're in the right direction. Again, I remember being told when I attended what was called School of Meditation in London for many years, as if something's complicated, it's wrong. You're going in the wrong direction. Oh, easier said than done, isn't it? How do we? It's not that easy to leave a complication behind. So I think meditation's a lifelong, well, it's very much a lifelong process. I'm still learning, I assure you, my dears, and I think I'm just a little boy still, in a grey beard, coming to the end of preparatory school, and maybe with a bit of luck I'll move on to high school. We'll see. Thank you for being so attentive.
Thank you. Thank you.
God bless you all. I wouldn't have dared say that years ago, but now it's the most meaningful thing I can say. God bless you.